I need to get this off. I could just pry it here, right? No, that's plastic. So what am I gonna do? So if you're doing the head gasket and timing belt on your 4056, this is a problem that you're gonna run into. Now, if you've watched my 3-part series, I actually did take this off with the pry bar, and that's how I usually do it. Not against the front cover, obviously. There are some spots that you can pry on that are safe, but I was shown a much better way to do this. So today we're gonna build the tool to take it off without having to sit here for hours with a pry bar and a hammer or swearing at that stupid pulley. Full disclosure, this is not my design and not my idea. This is actually an idea shown to me by Grant Boyer, who's an excellent mechanic and a great resource for information. Anyways, the trick to this tool is that we're going to use the bolt that's designed to retain the pulley, and we're going to turn around and use that retaining bolt to actually pull the pulley off. The 4056 has 2 pulleys up here. This outer piece and this inner harmonic balancer are actually separate. Now, to remove the outer pulley, we just have to take off these 4 bolts. Now you can see that I've already got 2 out. And to remove the entire harmonic balancer, we need to take out the big 19 mil in the middle. So why do I have the 2 out, and how are we going to use them? Let's head over to the workbench and I'll show you. We're going to need some materials to do this. So the first thing that we'll need is some ready rod or some really long bolts. I would suggest ready rod because that way you know you're not going to be short and it's cheap enough. For the Delica, we need M8 by 1.25 thread pitch. If you're working on a different vehicle, obviously match up the right thread pitch or it's not going to work. Then we need a couple of nuts and some kind of bar of some sort. Now, I'm using a chunk of 3/8 plate that's been cut down just because that's what I had kicking around. You can use square tube, square stock, or even unistrut will work. It just needs to be strong enough to push against without bending, so we actually pull the pulley off instead of just bending our puller. Yeah, that's right, we're building a puller, and sure, you could go out and buy a cheap puller, but there's a few reasons that we're building our own here. One, it's way more fun to build your own tools, so I'd rather do it that way. 2, it's a lot cheaper if you've already got some of the bits kicking around. And 3, a lot of those really cheap 3-jaw pullers just don't work well. So you end up having to go out and buy a pretty good quality puller for it to actually do the job. Now, first thing that we need to do is we need to get some measurements. So I'm gonna take 2 longer bolts here and just thread them in to the 2 bolts that we've already taken out. And I'm gonna measure across center to center roughly, just to find out what spacing we need here. So I'm gonna use a caliper, but you could get away using a ruler here too. This doesn't have to be all that precise, to be honest. Yeah, it looks like we're about 66.5 or so. So now we can take these out, and the next thing that we're gonna do is just measure our depth. So I'm gonna put this across the pulley, and we'll measure inboard. So we're about 50 mil there. And now that we know the numbers that we need here, we can start cutting our pieces to size. So our depth was 50 mil, but if we just went with 50, this wouldn't have enough to actually engage into the pulley. So we're going to add a little bit more. We know that we need 10 millimeters of engagement to actually thread in, but again, that's going to leave us with nothing coming out this side. So we need to add a little bit more out that side as well. Really, in theory, all we need is enough to be able to thread this nut on, but I'm actually going to add a little bit more because I'm going to make a little bit of a change to this design here after. So I'm actually going to go all the way out to 100 mil on this one here, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces at 100 mil. To cut the ready rod, you can just use a hacksaw, but I have this, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. Now we can deal with our bar. Because I want this to be somewhat reasonable looking, we're going to find the center first. So we're 126, we are about 63 to center. So we'll mark our center line and then we'll work from there. Now our bolt spacing was roughly around 66, so from our center line, we're going to measure out 33 mil, and we'll make a mark there on both sides. Yeah, we're not going for extreme accuracy here, it's just got to be close enough. Then we'll take our automatic punch here, and I'm just going to eyeball center, because like I said, we're not going for perfect. And we'll make a mark where we want to drill. Now I could stop there, but I'm actually going to add one more into the middle here, because I'm going to add 1 extra bolt in. You'll see why in a little bit. And now we can take it over to the drill press and drill holes. I got my hole tapped and I put a bolt in the middle here. Now you don't actually have to put this bolt in, it just makes life a little bit easier, but again, this puller will work just fine without it. Now all I need to do is take my ready rod and drop it into the 2 holes that we drilled, and we're ready to go. I mean, I could paint it up, but let's get this pulley off. Let's go to the van. First thing we need to do is put our crank bolt back in. We'll thread it all the way in by hand, just till it stops. Next we'll take our 2 pieces of ready rod and we'll thread them into the M8 holes that are open. Then finally we take our bar, put it over the ready rod, and then put our 2 nuts on. So first we're just going to take our center bolt here and thread it all the way out. And then we take our 19mm wrench and we continue to back the bolt out of the crank. Of course, because I have the cylinder head off already, it's a little bit more difficult. So what I'm going to do, to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to use the center bolt that I have here, because when that bolt head is pushing up against this bar, you have a lot of friction there. Now you might be wondering why I'm not just tightening down these nuts here, or even tightening down this center bolt to pull it. And the reason is, these are very small threads. We have nice big chunky threads on the crank bolt, so the chances of them stripping are very slim. If we tried to tighten up this center nut, that little M8 would probably just strip out. So I'm going to keep on backing this out. As you can see, this makes it a lot easier having just less friction on that bolt head. But again, you can do it without it. If you can't add that center bolt though, it makes life a lot easier. And there we go. Using that puller is way easier than how I used to do it with the pry bar, that's for sure. Now all we need to do is unthread it out of here, and we can keep on going on the timing belt job on this van. So if you enjoyed that video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. If you want to learn more, go ahead and check out one of the other videos on the channel. Otherwise, get out in the shop and do something. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.